I kept my relationship secret for 2 years because my family is toxic. But when my name is Kendra, and I am 27 years old. I grew up in a controlling family in a small town in Massachusetts. For 2 years, I kept my relationship with James secret from them. When I finally felt ready to introduce him as my fiancé, what followed was a betrayal so shocking, it forever changed my understanding of what family truly means. The nightmare began the moment they met him, and what happened next still feels unbelievable even now. If you are watching this video, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please subscribe if you have ever had to protect someone you love from toxic family members, and join me as I share my story. Growing up in my family was like living in a pressure cooker. My parents, Diana and Harold, controlled every aspect of my life, from the clothes I wore to the friends I made. Nothing was ever truly my choice. Our 2-story colonial house in a prestigious neighborhood was less of a home and more like a stage where we performed the role of the perfect family. My parents were obsessed with status in our community. My father worked as a bank executive, and my mother was heavily involved in local charity organizations. Their social standing was everything to them. Every dinner party, every community event, every school function was another opportunity to showcase their success and control the narrative about our family. From an early age, I realized my younger sister Amelia and I were treated very differently. She was born when I was 2, and somehow she just naturally fit into the role my parents wanted. Amelia was the golden child who could do no wrong in their eyes. She was beautiful, agreeable, and willing to follow their script for her life without question. When we were in elementary school, I once brought home an art project. I was proud of a watercolor painting my teacher had praised. My mother glanced at it and said, "That is nice, Kendra, but look at what your sister made." Amelia had created a simple finger painting, but my mother displayed it prominently on the refrigerator, while my watercolor was tucked away in a drawer. This pattern continued throughout our childhood, with my accomplishments minimized and hers celebrated. In high school, I joined the debate team and discovered I had a talent for public speaking. When I won a regional competition, my parents attended, but spent most of the event on their phones. The following weekend, they threw an elaborate party when Amelia was named to the homecoming court. The message was clear: beauty and social status were valued over intelligence and hard work. Dating was another area where their control was suffocating. Any boy I brought home was subjected to intense scrutiny. They needed to come from the right family, have the right career aspirations, and most importantly, be willing to acknowledge my parents' authority over our relationship. During my senior year, I dated a boy named Thomas. He came from a respected family in town, played basketball, and had been accepted to an Ivy League college. My parents approved of him immediately. They invited him to family events, spoke highly of him to their friends, and for once, I felt like I had done something right in their eyes. Thomas was nice enough, but we had little in common. Still, I convinced myself that this was what a good relationship looked like. We dated for almost 2 years through my first year at college. I attended a state university about an hour from home, as my parents refused to help with tuition if I went farther away. The cracks in our relationship started showing when Thomas became frustrated with how much my family interfered. He hated that every date had to be approved, that my parents would call constantly when we were together, and that any disagreement between us would result in my mother giving him advice on how to handle me. After one particularly uncomfortable dinner, where my father questioned Thomas about his 5-year career plan for the 100th time, Thomas ended our relationship. "I care about you, Kendra," he said, "but I cannot marry into this family. Your parents will never let us have our own life." His words hit me hard because they were true. And although I was sad about the breakup, I also felt a strange sense of relief. It was a wake-up call. After that, I made a decision that changed everything. I applied for a transfer to a design school in Boston, over 3 hours away from my hometown. When I was accepted with a partial scholarship, I told my parents I was going with or without their blessing. The fight that followed was epic. My mother cried and claimed I was abandoning the family. My father threatened to cut me off financially. Amelia sat silently watching the drama unfold with a small smile on her face. But for the first time, I stood firm. I had savings from a part-time job I could take out loans, and I was determined to create my own path. Moving to Boston was like breathing fresh air after being underwater. I found an affordable apartment with 2 roommates, immersed myself in my studies, and began to build a life that was authentically mine. I discovered a passion for graphic design and found that I was actually quite good at it. I still maintained contact with my family, of course. I returned for major holidays and endured their criticism of my career choice, my apartment, my friends, and pretty much everything else about my new life. Each visit left me emotionally drained, but I had learned to prepare myself for their negativity and recover more quickly once I returned to Boston. After graduation, I secured a position at a small but growing design agency in the city. My parents were unimpressed. "Graphic design is not a real career," my father said dismissively. "You will never make enough money to support yourself properly." Meanwhile, Amelia had followed their prescribed path perfectly. She attended their alma mater, joined my mother's sorority, and was dating the son of one of their country club friends. My parents spoke of her with pride, while regarding my life choices with barely concealed disappointment. Over time, I created 2 separate lives, the real one in Boston, where I was building a career, and friendships based on genuine connections, and the censored version I presented to my family. I learned to gray rock, providing minimal information about my life during our conversations and deflecting their intrusive questions. It was not ideal, but it was a survival strategy that allowed me to maintain my sanity while still having some form of relationship with them. Little did I know that this balancing act would become even more complicated when love unexpectedly entered the picture. I met James at a design conference in Chicago 3 years ago. I was 24, then had been living in Boston for several years, and had finally started to feel confident in my career and personal life. The conference was a big deal for me, the first time my agency had sent me to represent them at an industry event. James was one of the speakers, a talented web developer from Seattle who specialized in creating interactive experiences. His presentation was impressive, showcasing projects that seamlessly blended creativity with functionality. During the networking mixer afterward, I worked up the courage to approach him with some questions about his work. "I loved your presentation," I told him. "The way you integrated animation with user experience was really inspiring." His smile was warm and genuine. "Thanks. I believe functionality does not have to come at the expense of beauty." What was supposed to be a quick professional conversation turned into hours of discussion. We moved from talking about work to sharing our backgrounds, interests, and dreams. I learned that James had grown up in Seattle with parents who were both teachers and had encouraged his interest in technology from an early age. He had a younger brother who was studying medicine, and they remained close despite the geographic distance. The contrast between his family dynamics and mine was striking, and I found myself sharing more than I normally would with someone I had just met. There was something about James that made me feel safe, understood. "Would you like to get dinner tomorrow night?" he asked as the event was winding down. "There is this amazing restaurant near the hotel that a local friend recommended." I should have been flying back to Boston the next day, but I impulsively changed my flight to extend my stay. That first date was unlike any I had experienced before. There was no pretense, no performance, just 2 people genuinely enjoying each other's company. We talked about everything from our favorite books to our most embarrassing childhood memories. The hours flew by, and by the end of the evening, I knew this was something special. When we parted at the end of the conference, we promised to stay in touch. I returned to Boston, expecting our connection to fade with distance, but instead, it grew stronger. We texted daily, had long phone calls several times a week, and soon began video chatting regularly. 2 months after the conference, James flew to Boston for a weekend. Showing him around my city, introducing him to my friends, watching him fit so naturally into my life, it all confirmed what I was already feeling. I was falling in love with him. But as our relationship deepened, I faced a dilemma. The thought of introducing James to my family filled me with dread. I knew exactly how they would react. They would criticize his career choice despite his success, question his intentions, and ultimately try to control our relationship as they had done with Thomas and every boyfriend before him. One evening, about 6 months into our relationship, I finally opened up to James about my complicated family dynamics. We were sitting on my apartment balcony, watching the sunset over the Boston skyline. I explained about the constant criticism, the impossible standards, the way they had always favored Amelia, and how their interference had sabotaged my previous relationships. "I understand why meeting them makes you nervous," James said after listening attentively. "But I want you to know that nothing they could say or do would change how I feel about you." His unwavering support brought tears to my eyes. "You do not understand how manipulative they can be," I said. "They have a way of getting into your head, making you doubt yourself and your choices. I could not bear it if they did that to you, to us." James took my hand in his. "Then we will take this at your pace. If you are not ready for me to meet them, I respect that. What matters is what we build together, not their approval." His understanding was a gift I had never experienced before. We agreed to keep our relationship private from my family for the time being. It was not an ideal solution, but it felt necessary for protecting what we were building. The logistics of maintaining a secret relationship were not easy. James lived in Seattle, though his work allowed him to visit Boston frequently. We eventually settled into a rhythm where he would fly in for a week or two each month, working remotely during the day and spending evenings and weekends together. During family calls, I would carefully avoid mentioning James. When I visited my parents for holidays, I made excuses for why I could not stay longer. If James and I took trips together, I would share photos on social media only in private settings that excluded my family members. About a year into our relationship, James got an opportunity to work with a client in Boston on a long-term project. It was a big career move for him, but I knew he was also making the decision with our relationship in mind. "Are you sure about this?" I asked when he told me about the offer. "Moving across the country is a huge step." "I was already considering a change," he said, "and this project is exactly the kind of work I love. The fact that it brings me closer to you makes it perfect." When James moved to Boston, our relationship deepened even further. We spent most nights together, either at his new apartment or mine. We developed routines and traditions like Sunday morning pancakes and Wednesday movie nights. He became friends with my friends, and I got to know his colleagues. On several occasions, I video chatted with his family. His parents were warm and welcoming, asking thoughtful questions, and seeming genuinely interested in getting to know me. His brother teased him good-naturedly about finally finding someone who could put up with his terrible jokes. Their interactions were lighthearted and loving, so different from the tension that characterized my family gatherings. Living this double life took an emotional toll on me. I hated the dishonesty, even though I knew it was self-protection. There were moments when I almost broke down and told my parents about James. But then my mother would make some cutting remark about my life choices. Or my father would mention another suitable man they wanted to introduce me to. And I would remember exactly why I was keeping my relationship private. James was patient throughout it all, never pressuring me, but I could tell he sometimes felt hurt at being the secret part of my life. He never complained, but occasionally I would catch a look of sadness in his eyes when I had to end a call abruptly because my family was calling, or when I left for a holiday weekend without him. "I love you," he would say, "all of you, including the complicated parts. I will wait until you are ready." His patience and understanding only made me love him more and deepened my resolve to find a way to merge my two separate lives, no matter how difficult that might be. After 2 years of dating James, and I had built a solid foundation together. We had weathered disagreements, supported each other through career challenges, and grown to understand each other on a profound level. Our love had matured from the exciting spark of new romance into something deeper and more enduring. That autumn, we planned a weekend getaway to the coast of Maine. James said he wanted to see the famous fall foliage, but there was something in his manner that seemed different, a mix of excitement and nervousness that made me wonder if he had something special planned. We stayed at a charming bed and breakfast overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. The weather was perfect, crisp and clear, with leaves in brilliant shades of red, orange, and gold. On Saturday, we hiked along coastal trails, taking in the stunning views and stopping to explore tide pools. As the sun began to set, James suggested we find a spot to watch the sunset. He led me to a small, secluded cove where he had somehow arranged for a picnic basket and blanket to be waiting for us. I was touched by his thoughtfulness, but had no idea what was coming next. We enjoyed the wine and cheese he had selected, talking easily as we always did. Then, as the sky turned brilliant shades of pink and gold, James turned to face me. "Kendra," he said, his voice slightly shaky. "These past 2 years have been the happiest of my life. You are my best friend, my partner, my favorite person to talk to at the end of each day. I want to build a life with you, face whatever comes our way together." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Opening it to reveal a delicate vintage ring with a small diamond surrounded by sapphires, he asked, "Will you marry me?" Tears filled my eyes as joy washed over me. "Yes," I whispered, then louder, "Yes, absolutely yes." As he slipped the ring on my finger, I felt a momentary shadow cross my happiness. James noticed immediately. "What is it?" he asked, concern in his eyes. I took a deep breath. "I am so happy, truly. I know this means we need to tell my family about us. I cannot get married without them knowing you exist." James nodded, understanding as always. "We will face that together whenever you are ready. There is no rush." But I knew there was. I could not continue hiding such an important part of my life. More than that, I did not want to start our marriage with secrets and fear. "No," I said firmly. "I am done hiding. I am done letting them control me with fear and criticism. We will tell them together, and whatever happens, we will handle it." James smiled and squeezed my hand. "Whatever happens, we face it as a team." That night, as we celebrated our engagement, I felt a mix of elation and anxiety. I was certain about James, certain about our future together, but the thought of introducing him to my family filled me with dread. Back in Boston, I decided to seek professional help to prepare for what was sure to be a challenging situation. I found a therapist who specialized in family dynamics and began weekly sessions focused on setting boundaries with my parents and sister. Dr. Lawson helped me understand that my fear was rational given my past experiences, but that I had the strength to handle whatever came next. "Your parents have conditioned you to seek their approval," she explained. "But as an adult, you get to decide whose opinion matters in your life." We worked on specific phrases I could use when my family became critical or intrusive. We role-played difficult conversations and discussed strategies for staying calm under pressure. Most importantly, Dr. Lawson helped me understand that I could not control how my family would react, only how I responded to them. Meanwhile, James and I carefully planned how to introduce him to my family. We decided that a small gathering would be less stressful than a large family event for our first meeting. I would call my parents, tell them about James, and arrange to bring him to visit. We should be honest, but strategic, James suggested. They need to know we are engaged, but maybe we present it as a recent development rather than something we have been planning for months. I agreed with his approach. No need to emphasize that I had kept him a secret for 2 years, which would only make my parents more suspicious and hurt. With my heart racing, I finally made the call to my mother on a Sunday evening. I had rehearsed what to say, but still found myself stumbling over the words. "Mom, I have some news to share. I have been seeing someone, and it is serious. His name is James, and we are engaged." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Engaged?" My mother finally said, her voice tight. "To someone we have never met. How could you make such an important decision without consulting us?" I took a deep breath, remembering Dr. Lawson's advice. "I am 27 years old, Mom. This is my decision to make. I would like you to meet James. He is very special to me." "What does he do?" she asked immediately. "What family is he from?" These were exactly the questions I had expected. He is a web developer very successful in his field. He grew up in Seattle, and his parents are both educators. I could practically hear her disappointment through the phone. A web developer with teacher parents was far from the lawyer or doctor from an established East Coast family she had always envisioned for me. "Your father will want to speak with him," she said. "When can you bring him by?" I suggested the upcoming 4th of July weekend, which was about 3 weeks away. The annual family barbecue would be happening, but I thought meeting on my family's territory might put them more at ease. My mother agreed, though her tone remained cool. After ending the call, I felt physically exhausted, but also relieved. The secret was out at least partially. Now we just had to survive the actual meeting. In the weeks leading up to the 4th of July, my anxiety grew. I had nightmares about the meeting going horribly wrong. In one dream, my parents had invited all my former boyfriends to the barbecue to compete for my hand. In another, they pretended James was invisible, refusing to acknowledge his presence. I woke from these dreams, with my heart pounding, grateful to find James sleeping peacefully beside me. I also began experiencing anxiety attacks, something I had not dealt with since college. The first one hit while we were shopping for new clothes for the visit. Suddenly, I could not breathe. My heart raced, and I was certain something terrible was about to happen. James recognized what was happening immediately, guided me to a quiet corner, and helped me through breathing exercises until the panic subsided. "We do not have to do this," he said afterward. "If it is causing you this much distress, we can postpone or find another way." But I was determined. "No, this is exactly why we need to do it. I cannot let them have this power over me forever. I need to face this." James was my rock throughout this difficult time. He never showed any hesitation about meeting my family despite everything I had told him. "They are a part of you," he would say. "I want to know all parts of you, even the complicated ones." As the day approached, we prepared as if for battle. We discussed potential topics of conversation and landmines to avoid. I warned James about my father's interrogation style and my mother's passive-aggressive comments. I told him how Amelia might try to undermine me and suggested ways he could politely deflect. "Just be yourself," I finally said, realizing how absurd our preparation had become. "That is who I fell in love with, and if they cannot see how wonderful you are, that is their loss." James kissed me softly. "Exactly. And remember, no matter what happens this weekend, we leave together, we plan our wedding together, we build our life together. Your family can be a part of that journey if they choose to be supportive, but their approval is not required for our happiness." His words gave me strength. As we packed the car for the 3-hour drive to my parents' house, I felt a strange mix of dread and determination. Whatever happened next, we would face it together. The day of the family barbecue arrived with perfect summer weather, sunny and warm, with a gentle breeze. As James and I drove through my childhood neighborhood, I pointed out landmarks from my youth, the park where I used to play, the ice cream shop where I had my first job. Sharing these memories with him felt like bridging my past and future, and for a moment, I allowed myself to hope that the day might go better than I feared. We pulled up to my parents' colonial-style home at exactly noon. The house looked immaculate as always, with perfectly trimmed hedges and colorful flower beds. A few cars were already parked in the driveway, indicating that some relatives had arrived early. "Ready?" James asked, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. I nodded, though my stomach was in knots. "As ready as I will ever be." We approached the front door, and I rang the bell rather than using my key, feeling strangely like a visitor to my childhood home. My father opened the door, his expression carefully neutral as he assessed James. "You must be James," he said, extending his hand. "Harold Parker. Welcome to our home." "Thank you for having me, sir," James replied, his handshake firm and confident. "It is a pleasure to finally meet you." My mother appeared behind my father, looking elegant as always, in a casual but expensive sundress. "Kendra, darling," she said, giving me a brief hug before turning to James. "And this must be your young man. I am Diana Parker." "Lovely to meet you, Mrs. Parker," James said warmly. "Kendra has told me so much about you." My mother's smile did not reach her eyes. "All good things, I hope. Please come through to the garden. The family is gathering there." As we walked through the house, I noticed my mother examining James closely, taking in his appearance. He was dressed well in crisp chinos and a button-down shirt, looking handsome and professional. But I knew my mother was mentally comparing him to the country club set she had always envisioned me marrying into. In the backyard, several relatives were already mingling. My Aunt Vivian, my father's sister, was arranging platters of food on a long table. My Uncle Robert and his wife were chatting with my cousin Lisa. Everyone looked up as we entered, curiosity evident in their expressions. I made the introductions, watching carefully as each family member greeted James. They were polite, if somewhat reserved, asking the usual questions about where he was from and what he did for work. I could see them making their assessments, forming opinions based on these brief exchanges. We had been there about 20 minutes, and I was just beginning to relax slightly when I heard the sliding glass door open. Turning, I saw Amelia step into the garden, and my heart sank. My sister looked stunning as always in a flowing summer dress that highlighted her slender figure. Her long blonde hair was styled in loose waves, and her makeup was flawless. As her gaze landed on James, something flickered in her expression, a look I had seen before when she coveted something of mine. "Kendra," she exclaimed, coming over to air-kiss my cheek. "It has been too long, and this must be the mysterious fiancé I have been hearing about." She turned to James, extending her hand with a dazzling smile. "I am Amelia, the sister. So lovely to meet you." James smiled politely. "The pleasure is mine. Kendra has told me a lot about you." "Oh, all terrible things, I am sure." She laughed, touching his arm lightly. "Do not believe everything she says." I felt a familiar tension begin to build. This was Amelia's typical pattern, the flirtatious charm she turned on whenever she met a man she found attractive. "Actually," James said, keeping his arm firmly around my waist, "Kendra speaks very fondly of her family." I shot him a grateful look for the diplomatic response. My father approached, then clasping James on the shoulder. James, would you mind helping me with the grill for a moment? Man to man. I knew this was coming, the private interrogation. James nodded, giving my hand a quick squeeze before following my father to the far corner of the yard. Left alone with Amelia and my mother, I braced myself. He is handsome, my mother admitted reluctantly. But a web developer, really, Kendra. What sort of future can he provide? James is very successful, Mom. I defended. He works with major clients across the country. He is financially stable and loves what he does. Amelia sipped her wine, watching me closely. How did you two meet? You have never mentioned him before. I gave the simplified version of our meeting at the conference, carefully avoiding revealing how long we had actually been together. As I spoke, I kept one eye on James and my father, noting the intense conversation they appeared to be having. Moving around the garden to get a glass of water, I overheard my mother speaking to Aunt Vivian. He is not quite what we hoped for, Kendra, she was saying in a low voice. No real family connections, and this tech work seems so unstable. You know how these internet companies come and go. I bit my tongue, reminding myself that confronting her would only make things worse. Instead, I moved to join a conversation with my cousins, trying to appear more relaxed than I felt. Dinner was an uncomfortable affair. We sat at the long table in the garden with James and me on one side, my parents at the ends, and Amelia directly across from James. Throughout the meal, she directed most of her questions and comments to him, asking about his work in a way that suggested deep interest, touching her hair, and laughing at everything he said. My father continued his subtle interrogation, asking pointed questions about James's finances, his family background, his future career plans. James answered each question with grace and honesty, never showing irritation at the intrusive nature of the questioning. And where do you two plan to live after the wedding? My mother asked, looking pointedly at me. We are staying in Boston, I replied firmly. We both have established careers there. Boston is so far, she sighed. Amelia has stayed close to home, and it has been wonderful having her nearby. She and Daniel are able to join us for dinner several times a week. Daniel was the son of my father's golf partner, a boring but suitably connected young man who worked at my father's bank. I had met him several times and found him completely forgettable. Actually, Amelia interjected, Daniel and I broke up last month. It just was not working out. She directed this comment to James with a meaningful look I did not like at all. The rest of the evening continued in the same vein. My parents barely acknowledged our engagement, changing the subject whenever it came up. Amelia's attention to James became increasingly obvious to the point where even my cousins were exchanging uncomfortable glances. By the time we said our goodbyes, I was emotionally exhausted. James and I had booked a hotel room nearby rather than staying at my parents' house, a decision I was immensely grateful for as we drove away. Once in the car, we sat in silence for several minutes processing the evening. Well, James finally said, that was intense. I looked at him anxiously. I am so sorry. They were awful. He reached for my hand. They were exactly as you described, but we got through it, and now it is done. What did my father say to you at the grill? I asked. James sighed. He asked a lot of questions about my income, my savings, whether I had any debt. Then he suggested that while I seemed like a nice young man, he had always envisioned you with someone more established. I believe the term old money was used. I groaned. That sounds like him, and Amelia was so inappropriate with her flirting. I did notice that, James said carefully, but I made it very clear I only had eyes for you. We analyzed the evening all the way back to the hotel, dissecting each uncomfortable moment. Despite everything, I felt a sense of relief. The meeting had gone poorly, yes, but we had survived it. James had seen my family at their worst and was still here, still committed to our relationship. "At least it is over," I said as we prepared for bed. "We fulfilled our obligation, and now we can move forward with wedding planning without this hanging over our heads." James pulled me into his arms. "Exactly. The hard part is behind us." How wrong we were. The real nightmare was just beginning. The morning after the barbecue, I woke to the insistent buzzing of my phone. Groggily reaching for it, I was surprised to see dozens of notifications from various social media platforms. Friends were tagging me, sending me messages, and commenting on posts I had not seen. "What is going on?" I murmured, scrolling through the notifications with growing confusion. James stirred beside me. "Everything okay?" "I am not sure," I replied, opening the first notification. What I saw made my blood run cold. Amelia had posted a series of photos from the barbecue on her Instagram account. Several featured her and James together, carefully framed to make them appear as a couple. One showed them standing by the grill. Another captured a moment when they were talking at the table. The captions were vague but suggestive. "Sometimes the best things come when you least expect them," and "when you just know." The comments section was filled with congratulations and questions about her new man. Several of our mutual acquaintances had tagged me asking if this was my boyfriend they had heard about, expressing confusion. "James," I said, my voice shaking. "Look at this." He sat up immediately, taking the phone from me. As he scrolled through the posts, his expression changed from confusion to disbelief. "This is insane," he muttered. "Why would she do this?" Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was my mother. With a deep breath, I answered. "Mom, what is going on with Amelia's social media posts?" "Oh, Kendra," she replied, her voice syrupy sweet. "I was just calling to see how you are doing this morning. Wasn't it lovely having everyone together yesterday?" "Mom," I said firmly. "Amelia is posting photos that make it look like she and James are together. This is not okay." There was a pause, and then my mother's tone changed. "Well, dear, you have to admit that James and Amelia had quite the connection yesterday. Everyone noticed it. Your father and I were just discussing how naturally they got along." I was stunned. "What are you talking about? James is my fiancé. We came to introduce him to the family." "Of course, and we met him," she replied smoothly. "But you cannot deny there was a special chemistry between him and Amelia. These things happen, Kendra. Sometimes people meet and just have an immediate connection." My hand was shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. "Mom, this is not funny. Tell Amelia to take down those posts immediately." "Kendra, you have always been so possessive," my mother sighed. "Remember when you got upset because Amelia borrowed your prom dress, or when she was chosen for that summer program you applied for? You need to learn to be more generous, especially with your sister." I ended the call abruptly, unable to believe what I was hearing. James had been listening to my side of the conversation, his face growing increasingly concerned. "What did she say?" he asked. They are acting like you and Amelia hit it off," I stammered. "Like there was some connection between you two. This is crazy." James wrapped his arms around me. "It is crazy and completely untrue. I barely spoke to your sister beyond basic politeness. You were there the whole time." My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from my father. "James seems like a stable provider. Exactly what Amelia needs at this stage in her life. Why do not you come over for lunch today so we can discuss this situation like adults?" I showed the message to James, who read it with widening eyes. "This is beyond inappropriate," he said. "They are acting as if I am some commodity to be reassigned. I am calling your father right now." Before he could, my phone buzzed with another notification. Amelia had tagged James in a new post, a selfie of just her with the caption, "Looking forward to dinner tonight with this special someone, just the two of us this time." "What dinner?" I exclaimed. "James, did you make plans with my sister?" "Absolutely not," he said firmly. "I have never even had a private conversation with her, let alone made plans." As if on cue, James's phone chimed with a text notification. He grabbed it from the nightstand and groaned. "Your parents just texted me inviting me to dinner tonight at their house. Without you. They said they want to get to know their future son-in-law better. I never gave them my number." The situation was spiraling out of control. Over the next few hours, we discovered that Amelia had somehow obtained James's contact information and had been sending him increasingly personal texts. She had also been telling family members and friends that she and James had made a real connection and were exploring their feelings. James showed me the texts from Amelia, which ranged from overly friendly to downright inappropriate. "I felt something special between us yesterday," one read. "I think we should talk privately about these feelings." I was beyond hurt and moving rapidly into fury. James immediately blocked Amelia's number and declined the dinner invitation from my parents in a polite but firm message stating clearly that he was engaged to me and had no interest in any other relationship. The situation only escalated from there. Amelia changed her relationship status on Facebook to engaged with a vague post about finding love when you least expect it. She did not tag James, presumably because he had already blocked her, but the implication was clear to anyone who had seen her previous posts. I called Amelia directly, something I rarely did. When she answered, her voice was sugary sweet. "Kendra, how are you today?" "What are you doing?" I demanded. "Take down those posts immediately. James is my fiancé. We are getting married. This is not a game." "Oh, Kendra," she sighed, echoing our mother's tone perfectly. "I know this must be difficult for you, but you have to admit that James and I had an instant connection. These things happen. You will find someone else, someone more suited to you." "Are you insane?" I nearly shouted. "You met him yesterday for a few hours in my presence the entire time. There was no connection. He is not interested in you. Take down the posts." "Mom and Dad agree that James would be happier with me," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "They think his practical nature balances my creativity perfectly. And you know, Dad has always said I need a stable provider type." I ended the call feeling physically ill. What was happening? How had a simple family introduction turned into this bizarre alternate reality where my sister was claiming my fiancé? Later that day, we learned from my cousin Lisa that my parents had been telling extended family members that James had been dating both me and Amelia, but had ultimately chosen Amelia. According to their twisted narrative, I was having trouble accepting this fact. "They are saying you introduced him as your boyfriend because you were not ready to admit he had chosen Amelia," Lisa told me hesitantly. "They are worried about you saying you have created an elaborate fantasy about being engaged to him." I was speechless. This was gaslighting on a level I had never experienced even from my family. The humiliation was overwhelming. Friends and colleagues began reaching out confused by the conflicting information. Some were gentle in their inquiries, but others seemed almost excited by the apparent drama, eager for details about what they assumed was a scandalous love triangle. Each time I had to explain that no, my sister had not stolen my fiancé, that the entire narrative was a fiction created by my family. I felt a fresh wave of hurt and anger. James was equally distressed, particularly when his own friends and colleagues began seeing the social media posts and asking questions. "This is affecting my professional reputation," he told me after fielding uncomfortable questions from a client who had somehow seen Amelia's posts. "People are starting to wonder if I am the kind of person who would be engaged to two women at once." The situation was becoming unbearable, and we knew we needed to take decisive action. But we had no idea just how much worse things would get before we could resolve it. The online harassment campaign began subtly at first. Comments would appear on my social media posts questioning my relationship with James. Some seemed to come from fake accounts, while others were from Amelia's friends. They ranged from sympathetic, "So sorry about what happened with James, you deserve better," to outright malicious, pathetic to keep pretending he chose you when everyone knows the truth. I set my accounts to private and blocked the most obvious offenders, but the damage to my reputation was spreading beyond my control. Mutual acquaintances who had known me for years were reaching out not to offer support, but to express concern that I was not accepting reality or creating drama by claiming James was my fiancé. The gaslighting was so thorough that even people who had met us as a couple were beginning to question their memories. "I thought you and James were together, but then I saw Amelia's engagement announcement," one friend texted. "I am confused about what is happening." James was experiencing similar issues with colleagues and industry contacts, approaching him delicately about his complicated personal situation. His professional reputation, built on reliability and integrity, was being quietly undermined. Then about 2 weeks after the barbecue, something new appeared online, a wedding website for Amelia and James, complete with their love story, a completely fabricated account of how they met at a design conference, engagement photos clearly manipulated from pictures taken at the family barbecue, and a registry. "This is crossing into illegal territory," James said when I showed him the website, his voice tight with anger. "This is identity theft and fraud." The situation escalated further when James's workplace received an anonymous email questioning his character, suggesting he was leading on 2 sisters and creating a hostile environment for women. His boss thankfully knew James well enough to bring the email directly to him rather than taking it seriously, but it was a clear attempt to damage his career. My family's behavior became increasingly bizarre. My mother called frequently, always acting as if nothing unusual was happening, inviting me to help plan the wedding, without ever specifying whose wedding she meant. My father sent James messages about taking care of his little girl, deliberately remaining vague about which daughter he was referring to. Amelia's campaign was more direct. She continued to create content suggesting she and James were together, going so far as to post pictures of places they had supposedly visited together, all photoshopped or taken from James's private Instagram. She even began wearing a fake engagement ring that looked suspiciously similar to the vintage one James had given me. The final straw came when James received a call from his parents in Seattle. They had received formal wedding invitations for the marriage of their son James to Amelia Parker at an exclusive venue on the date we had tentatively selected for our own wedding. My mother was confused. James told me his face pale after the call. "She asked if we had broken up, if I was seeing your sister now. She had the invitation in her hand while we were talking. It looks legitimate professional quality." I felt something break inside me. This had gone beyond family drama or even malicious meddling. This was a coordinated campaign to destroy our relationship and gaslight us both to the point of doubting our own reality. I called Dr. Lawson and scheduled an emergency therapy session that same day. James came with me, both of us at our breaking point. "What your family is doing is not just inappropriate, it is abusive," Dr. Lawson said after we explained the situation. "This level of manipulation and gaslighting is extremely concerning." "What do we do?" I asked, feeling utterly helpless. "How do we make this stop?" "I think you need to confront them directly with evidence in hand," she advised. "Not to convince them to accept your relationship, but to make it absolutely clear that their behavior will not be tolerated and will have consequences." With Dr. Lawson's guidance, James and I formulated a plan. We would gather evidence of all the harassment and false claims. We would confront my family in person one last time to demand they cease all contact, and remove the false information they had spread. And most importantly, I would make it clear that if their behavior continued, I would cut all ties with them permanently. For the next few days, we documented everything: screenshots of Amelia's posts and the fake wedding website records of the texts and calls the invitation sent to James's parents' emails to James's workplace. We compiled it all into an organized file, irrefutable evidence of their manipulation. Then, on a Sunday morning, we drove to my parents' house unannounced. My heart was pounding as we pulled into the driveway, but I also felt a strange sense of calm. For perhaps the first time in my life, I was absolutely certain that I was doing the right thing. Both my parents' cars were in the driveway, as was Amelia's. Good, I thought. Everyone would hear what I had to say. My father opened the door, surprise evident on his face. "Kendra, James, we were not expecting you." "We need to talk," I said firmly, stepping past him into the house without waiting for an invitation. "All of us. Now." My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Kendra, what a surprise. And James, how lovely to see you again." Her tone was pleasant, as if nothing unusual had been happening for the past weeks. "Where is Amelia?" I demanded. "She needs to be part of this conversation." "I am here," my sister said, descending the stairs. She smiled at James, completely ignoring me. "I did not know you were coming over today." "Living room." "All of you. Now." I stated, my voice leaving no room for argument. Surprisingly, they complied, perhaps curious about what had prompted this uncharacteristic assertiveness from me. We gathered in the formal living room, my parents on the sofa, Amelia in an armchair, James and I standing. "What you have been doing is unacceptable," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "The lies, the manipulation, the attempts to damage James's reputation and gaslight us both. It stops today." My mother's expression became concerned, but in the theatrical way I had seen her use at charity events when someone said something inappropriate. "Kendra, darling, I do not know what you mean. We have only been supportive of you, as always." "Supportive?" I laughed incredulously. "You have been telling people that James is engaged to Amelia. You sent wedding invitations to his parents. You tried to get him fired." "Now that is simply not true," my father interjected. "We merely observed that James and Amelia seemed to have a special connection, something that was obvious to everyone at the barbecue." James stepped forward, his expression serious. "With all due respect, sir, there was no connection. I met Amelia once for a few hours and spoke to her only in group conversation. I am engaged to Kendra, whom I love deeply. Any suggestion otherwise is completely fabricated." Amelia's eyes welled with tears, a performance I had seen many times before. "I cannot believe you would say that after everything we have shared. The way you looked at me, the things you said when we were alone." "We were never alone," James stated flatly. "Not for a single moment." I opened the folder we had brought and began laying out the evidence piece by piece on the coffee table. "Here are screenshots of the fake wedding website you created. Here are the manipulated photos. Here is the invitation you sent to James's parents. Here are the emails sent to his workplace." My parents and Amelia stared at the evidence, but rather than showing shame or remorse, their expressions hardened. "You always were dramatic, Kendra," my mother said dismissively, "making mountains out of molehills." "This is not drama," I replied, my voice rising. "This is harassment. This is emotional abuse. This is potentially illegal identity theft and defamation." My father leaned forward, his business face on. "Now, let us not throw around legal terms. We are family. Families have misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings?" I was nearly shouting now. "You tried to steal my fiancé for Amelia. You created a completely false narrative and spread it to everyone we know. How is that a misunderstanding? Amelia suddenly changed tactics, her tears vanishing as quickly as they had appeared. James told me he felt trapped with you, she said coldly, that he wanted out, but did not know how to tell you. I was just helping him find a way. James looked at her with undisguised disgust. That is a complete lie. I have never said anything remotely like that to you or anyone else. The conversation continued in this vein with my family attempting to gaslight, manipulate, and lie their way out of the situation. They tried every tactic: denial, deflection, accusation, victim playing. Nothing worked. Finally, I had heard enough. I stood up straight, looking each of them in the eye. I am done. I am cutting all ties with this family effective immediately. The harassment stops now, or we will pursue legal action. Remove all false information from social media and the internet. Contact everyone you have lied to and tell them the truth. Leave James and me alone completely. My mother's face paled. You cannot be serious. We are your family. No, I said, a strange calm settling over me. Family does not do what you have done. Family supports each other, respects boundaries, and wants happiness for each other. You have never been that for me. You will regret this, my father warned. You need us. You have always needed us. I shook my head. No, I do not. I have built a life without your approval or support. I have found love with someone who respects me. I have friends who care about me. I do not need whatever toxic version of family you are offering. Amelia stood up, her face twisted with anger. You think you have won, but this is not over. James will realize his mistake eventually. James took my hand firmly in his. The only mistake was thinking we could have a reasonable conversation with you. Kendra and I are leaving now, and we will not be back. As we walked toward the door, my mother called out, If you walk out now, do not expect to be welcomed back. You are choosing him over your real family. I turned one last time. Yes, I am, and it is the easiest choice I have ever made. With that, we left, closing the door firmly behind us. In the car, I broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the finality of what had just happened. James held me as I cried, neither of us speaking for a long time. Finally, I wiped my eyes and took a deep breath. Let's go home. James nodded, starting the car. Home, he agreed, to our real life. As we drove away, I felt a weight lifting. I had finally stood up to the toxic patterns that had defined my family relationships for so long. The road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time, I was truly free. The weeks following our confrontation with my family were both challenging and liberating. The immediate aftermath required practical steps to protect ourselves. We changed our phone numbers, blocked my family on all social media platforms, and moved to a new apartment in a different neighborhood of Boston. These actions were necessary precautions, but they also symbolized our fresh start. Explaining the situation to James's parents was difficult. They had been confused and concerned after receiving the fake wedding invitation and now needed to understand the full story. James arranged a video call, and together we explained the toxic dynamic of my family and the extreme measures they had taken. I am so sorry you have been dragged into this, I told them, fighting back tears of shame. James's mother's expression was filled with compassion. Kendra, you have nothing to apologize for. You did not choose the family you were born into. We are just grateful that you found each other and that you are taking steps to protect yourselves. Her understanding was overwhelming. James's father nodded in agreement. "We are behind you both 100%. And Kendra, I hope you know that you have family in us if you want it." Their unconditional support was a new experience for me, a stark contrast to what I had grown up with. It made the loss of my birth family both easier and harder to bear, illuminating what healthy family relationships could look like while highlighting what I had never had. Despite our precautions, the emotional aftermath was messy. I experienced waves of grief, anger, guilt, and relief, often cycling through all these emotions in a single day. There were moments when I questioned my decision, when the programming of a lifetime made me wonder if I was overreacting or being ungrateful. In these moments of doubt, I turned to therapy. Dr. Lawson helped me understand that my grief was normal even when the relationship I was grieving had been unhealthy. "You are mourning the family you wanted them to be, the family you deserved to have," she explained. "And you are also mourning the hope that they might change, which is a difficult hope to let go of." James and I decided to continue couples therapy as well, recognizing that the trauma we had experienced together could affect our relationship if not addressed. These sessions became a safe space to process our individual reactions and strengthen our communication. "I worry sometimes that I took you away from your family," James admitted during one session. "That someday you might resent me for being the catalyst for this estrangement." I reached for his hand. "You did not take me away from them. You showed me what healthy love looks like, which helped me see how unhealthy their behavior was. If anything, you gave me the strength to make a decision I probably should have made years ago." One unexpected source of support came in the form of an email from my father's sister, Aunt Vivian. She had always been somewhat distant from our family attending gatherings, but rarely getting involved in the dynamics. Her message was brief, but meaningful. "I cut ties with your father 20 years ago for similar reasons. It was the hardest and best decision of my life. I am here if you ever want to talk." We began meeting for coffee occasionally. Aunt Vivian shared her own experiences with my father's controlling behavior and my mother's manipulations. She had maintained her distance to protect herself, watching from afar, as the same patterns played out with me. "I should have said something sooner," she told me during one of our meetings. "But I did not think you would believe me. These family patterns are powerful. You have to be ready to see them for what they are." She was right. Until I had experienced James's love and respect, until I had built a life based on authenticity rather than performance, I would not have been able to recognize just how toxic my family's behavior was. 3 months after the confrontation, James and I decided to go ahead with our wedding plans, though on a much smaller scale than originally envisioned. We chose a charming inn on the coast of Maine, near where James had proposed, and invited only those who had been supportive throughout our ordeal, close friends James's family and Aunt Vivian. The planning process was healing, focusing on what we wanted our marriage to represent, rather than meeting external expectations. We incorporated elements that were meaningful to us, readings from books we loved, music that had been significant in our relationship, personal vows we wrote together. 2 weeks before the wedding, we received word that Amelia was planning to show up at the ceremony. A mutual acquaintance had heard her discussing her plans to object during the service to create one final scene. In the past, this news would have sent me into a panic. Instead, I felt a strange calm. I spoke with the inn's management, hired a security person for the day, and provided them with photos of my family members with instructions not to allow them entry. When our wedding day arrived, it was everything we had hoped for: intimate, joyful, and authentic. The ceremony took place on a cliff overlooking the ocean, with the autumn leaves providing a brilliant backdrop of red and gold. James's nephew served as ring bearer, his brother as best man. My closest friend from college was my maid of honor, and Aunt Vivian sat in the front row beaming with pride. True to the warning, Amelia did attempt to crash the wedding, arriving midway through the ceremony. The security person intercepted her before she could make a scene, escorting her off the property, while we continued our vows, blissfully unaware until later. When I heard about it that evening, I felt a momentary twinge of sadness, not for Amelia specifically, but for the relationship we might have had in a different family. Then James squeezed my hand, and I returned to the joy of our celebration, to the genuine love surrounding us from the family we had chosen. In the months that followed, we established new traditions for holidays and celebrations. Thanksgiving with James's family in Seattle, Christmas with friends in Boston, summer weekends exploring New England. Each experience helped redefine what family could be based on mutual respect and genuine care, rather than obligation and control. We also found an online support community for others who had experienced family estrangement. The stories shared there reassured us that we were not alone, that many others had faced similar difficult choices and found peace on the other side. I began contributing to the forum, finding that helping others navigate their own family challenges was healing for me as well. The journey of setting healthy boundaries extended beyond my birth family. I became more discerning in all my relationships, recognizing red flags I might have previously ignored. I learned to trust my instincts, to voice my needs clearly, and to walk away from connections that did not serve my well-being. As I look back now, almost a year after cutting ties with my family, I can honestly say it was the most painful and most liberating decision of my life. There are still difficult moments, particularly around major life events, when their absence is felt. But these moments no longer shake my conviction that I made the right choice. James and I are now discussing starting a family of our own, approaching the topic with intentionality and care. We talk openly about the patterns we want to break the environment. We want to create the values we want to instill. We know that healing is an ongoing process, that the work of undoing generational trauma does not happen overnight. I have learned that family is not defined by blood or legal ties, but by love, respect, and mutual support. It is found in the people who celebrate your joys, comfort your sorrows, and accept you fully as you are. It is built through consistent acts of care and maintained through honest communication and healthy boundaries. Most importantly, I have learned that it is never too late to choose authenticity over toxic connection. Walking away from my birth family was not an act of giving up, but an act of profound self-love and courage. It was choosing truth over comfortable lies, choosing a future of possibility over a past of limitation. If you are watching this and struggling with similar family dynamics, know that you are not alone. Your instincts matter. Your happiness matters. And sometimes protecting the love you have found means making the difficult choice to leave behind the people who cannot celebrate it with you. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. I would love to hear in the comments about your own experiences with toxic family dynamics, or how you have created chosen family in your life. Remember that sharing our stories helps others feel less alone in their struggles. Take care of yourselves and the relationships that truly nourish your soul.